Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Jam, and I'm joined by Jude. Say hi, Jude.
Howdy.
And Lucy today. Say hi, Lucy.
They haven't thrown me back in the mines yet. I'm still here.
And today we're going to be talking about an underrated pile of bombs that we think you should be playing in your commander decks. All right, I get to start us off being the most wonderful and cool host, and I picked an Into the North. It's one in a green. Search your library for a Snowland card, put it into play tapped, then shuffle your library. I like this card for a lot of reasons. First off, Rampant Growth sees more play than this, and this is a Rampant Growth on steroids because it's any Snowland, which means it can get basic Snowlands, your tapped dual Snowlands, and even your Dark Depths.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I used to run this actually, and I used to have a Yisan the Wanderer Bard, more casual than what Yisan is usually seen doing, at least at first. And the cost of just playing all snow basics when you play something like this to just make it a good ramping growth is not an issue, especially not since they've been reprinted so heavily. But the upside of getting something like a Dark Depths is just ridiculous. I also do think that the printing, like you said, of the snow duels um, bumped the stock on this card because if you're ramping on turn two, you don't really care if you're getting like a tap duel if you're in a lower power deck. Like if a tap duel for 2 mana out of your deck is not good enough for you, you're playing at a power level where you're probably not playing rampant growth either.
Aren't there two sets of snow duels?
Yeah, there's the ones with the land types, and then there's the ones without the land types.
Yeah, I think it was from like the Cold Snap block and then, or not block. I think it's Cold Snap and then Kaldheim that they're from. But
Cold Snap had the non basic land ones, like Highland Veiled, I believe is the Gruul one. And then Kaldheim has the ones with the basic land types.
I think I prefer the ones with types on them a little bit more, mostly because I learn a lot of check and reveal lands.
Yeah, those are good for budget mana bases, so that makes sense.
I'm about to say, I can't in good conscience encourage you to run reveal lands in your commander decks, but I would encourage you running the ones with the basic land types over the ones that don't.
Yeah, maybe I spoke too strongly. I don't think the reveal lands are very good. Someone who's played with a lot of snarls from Strixhaven. But
oh God, don't start me on snarls.
I love the snarls though.
Watsy, get the snarls out of your dang precons. They're awful. Take the stupid snarls out. Put in anything else.
Or, I mean, if you have them already, the Verges are good with this as too. I mean, I think Into the North.
Yeah.
I'm not invested in whether or not it's better than Rampant Growth or not. Although I think more people will play Rampant Growth just because they don't want to substitute all the lands in their deck for Snowlands. But I mean,
it's a real cost.
Yeah, it's more of a monetary cost than anything. Honestly, I don't think many people are rolling up to EDH night with like snow hate cards in their deck.
Now I'm gonna say this because I used to do this in my mono white deck. If you run this and you run all snow basics, you need to be running extra planar lens. Because it does differentiate snow basics over regular basics, and you can break that parity if you're playing against another green deck.
That is true. And I think it's just in general, there's a lot of cards that have like synergies with snowlands that people just kind of forget about.
It lets you do dumb things like play Realms Uncharted and get a basic forest and a snow-covered forest. That's not really a good thing you can do, but it's a funny thing you can do.
Yeah.
All right. Next card.
It's mine, and it's also ramp. And I'm going to argue in favor of Edge of Autumn. Edge of Autumn, 1 in a green, originally from Time Spiral, for a sorcery that says, if you control 4 or fewer lands, search your library for a basic land card, put it into play tapped and shuffle. You can also cycle it by sacrificing a land. So this card, to me, has always had a lot of upside. it is just a rampant growth if you have 4 or fewer lands. And that is kind of the situation where you want to play a rampant growth is just really early. But how often in a green deck, especially, are you getting to the point where you've ramped plenty? You have
Never.
more lands than you know what to do with.
Never.
You know? Nonsense. You absolutely can be sacrificing a land to draw a card for no mana investment. And that's a really good flexibility. This turns into a modal spell that I have always valued highly. I used to play this in Marin because it also plays into sacrifice synergies, as long as it's sacrificing permanents. And though you don't get to see it here because I wanted it to be more legible, you do get the option of playing it with one of the sick time spiral frames because this was a future card.
Yep.
So it has like the mana cost on the side, and I think that version looks awesome. Though it is much more accessible now that has been reprinted in Time Spiral Remastered.
I mean, I always put like lands with like where you can pump a lot of extra mana into them, or sometimes my creatures will have an ability where you can pump a lot of mana into them. Or I'm always drawing enough cards to where I can use all my mana, so I never have enough mana, so I never want to sacrifice a land.
Well, I mean,
counterpoint, get Rog Monster.
Yeah, but
I
that's
don't know.
one deck out of thousands in the format.
Okay, sure. Lord Windgrace.
What about Get Rog Ravenous Ride, huh? That's at least 3 decks now.
Yeah, I mean, we could sit here all day, and I could list off commanders and decks in general that really like you being able to turn a ramp spell into a sacrifice a land specifically and draw a card. You know, you can do a really dumb thing with this if you're really committed to the self mill strategy, and you can play something like Dakmor Salvage, which is a tapped black land with Dredge 2 on it. And you can sack Dakmor Salvage to pay the cycling cost and then dredge the Dakmor Salvage. If you're in a deck that cares about looping lands.
Did anyone have a timer running for how long it would take Lucid Dimension Dredge?
You should.
You should.
Yeah. You absolutely should.
Next time.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like this. Hold on, Buster. Go back to Edge of Autumn. Yeah. I like this. In big ramp decks where I'm running like more than the prescribed like 10 or so ramp spells that most decks in Commander want, I very highly value like modal ramp spells. Like this is essentially like this Migration Path, Draconia's Command. So I like this. I haven't personally run it yet, but next time I build a green deck, maybe I will.
Would highly recommend it. I never leave home without it.
Okay, and this is my card, and I'm not talking about ramp because I like killing things. So we are going to be talking about Gix's Command, which is for 3 black, a sorcery. It's a command, so you choose 2 of 4 options. You can either put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature and give it lifelink until end of turn. You can destroy each creature with power 2 or less. You can return up to 2 creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, or you can have each opponent sacrifice a creature with the highest power among creatures they control. I love this card so much. I really like building with it, but I especially like playing with it because every time it shows up in my hand, I'm thinking about a different way to use it. And to be fair, I'm almost always doing the last mode, the Soul Shatter one, because that's just a good effect to have in Commander. But
very much so,
it can be a lopsided wrath that kills both their biggest thing and all of their small stuff. You can use it as a life gain spell with the lifelink mode, especially because I run it in Extus, so you can give lifelink to a blood avatar and just heal 9 off of just the attack trigger. Or regrowing 2 creature cards is really good as well. I think I've like used all of the different modes on this in different games, and they all feel great.
Yeah, I think all of the modes just feel really good, and especially like the Soul Shatter mode and the destroy each creature with power 2 or less mode. But if there's times when you don't want to destroy each creature with power 2 or less, or you don't want to Soul Shatter everything, then the other modes are also actually pretty decent too.
Yeah, it's almost never a dead card.
I think that's kind of the beauty of command cards is, you know, you get some people that tend to be pretty harsh because if it doesn't compare favorably to something like Primal Command or Cryptic Command, they're like, oh, it's not it's not the best thing in the world. No, this card just is solid no matter how you end up playing it and can be very powerful. I briefly ran it in I had a very beautiful altered Atraxa Praetor's Voice and wanted to play it in a more fair way, and so I played it in Phyrexian Tribal,
Nice.
and that was my excuse to run this as a board wipe card.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And people are still pretty not thrilled to see an Atraxa with 2+1/+1 counters and lifelink. Well, she already has lifelink, but you know what I mean.
I forget. Does
Just being able to do that
double
while
life
wiping.
link in that situation?
No.
I know there's some
Keyworded lifelink is just lifelink. If you have triggered lifelink like older cards, and then you add lifelink, they will trigger independently. Well,
Neat.
they won't trigger because lifelink doesn't trigger; it just
Yeah.
happens. But if you have 2 instances of lifelink, it's the same as having 2 instances of flying. You don't get to fly higher. But yes, Gix's command very solid. Also a great excuse to have more Gix related things in Magic. As a Phyrexian lover, I was glad to see Gix get some love in Brothers War.
Also, more Dominic Mayer art in your deck, which you always need more of because he.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Next, I'm going to talk about a red card. It's Wild Magic Surge. It's double red. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. Its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a permanent card that shares a card type with that permanent. They put that card on to the battlefield and the rest on the bottom in a random order. I think this card is cracked in half because red's best other like hit anything spell is like Chaos Warp, and this is like basically Chaos Warp. There are sometimes when it's worse than Chaos Warp, and then there's also sometimes where it's better than Chaos Warp as well.
I do not like Chaos Warp effects. So my first thought when I see this card is I can see a world where I play it because I'm not too proud to say I haven't played a mono red commander deck and had to begrudgingly put Chaos Warp in because I need more consistency on finding some way to deal with enchantments. My problem with this is that if you hit an enchantment, because it's a problematic card type for red, you're guaranteeing they find another enchantment, which is frustrating. But I am very against the value gremlin in my heart is so against giving my opponent something else. I can see the upside for it. But outside of mono red, I would never play this card. You couldn't pay me to play this card outside of mono red.
I mean, I think it would be okay. Like, you know, blue, red, and green are all to a certain extent strapped for like hard removal in a lot of instances. And I know like counter spells, but you don't always want to hold the mana up for those. So I could play this in any like teamer configuration that includes red. So like Izzet or Gruul or mono red teamer. And I think it would be fine there. It's not necessarily the first thing I'm reaching for. One thing that I do like about this is because it counts all card types. You can do stuff like turn someone's big, scary artifact creature, like roaming throne or something, turn it into a mana rock, potentially. But obviously that's not a consistent thing.
You can also, like, if someone has, like, a big, scary artifact, a big, scary enchantment on their board, you can liquid metal torque it into a artifact enchantment, and they're more likely to hit a mana rock instead of another big, scary.
I mean, if you're doing that anyways, couldn't you just like turn it into an artifact and then upgrade it?
Yeah,
correct.
If you don't have the if you don't have the liquid metal torque in your hand, Wild Magic Surge will hit enchantments more reliably.
I will begrudgingly make a case for the fact that you can hit a problematic land with this and then turn it into kind of a Ghost Quarter effect where they're more than likely going to hit a land that's less relevant than like if you use this on like a Nykthos or something. You know, they're more than likely going to hit just a basic or some kind of random utility land versus the best thing in their deck. Still not as consistent as other ways that they could be removing these lands, but I like the corner case of being able to do that at least.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
All right. Next is
We stand
Lucy.
non-land permanent targeting in this household. So I could have just as easily just put Mazavith here because I think not enough people are playing Mazavith. That being said, outside of decks that don't really have a consistent way to ramp, I didn't see on EDH Rec a high percentage of decks actually playing Thematic Compass, and I think that's a crime. So Thematic Compass is a 2 generic mana artifact that has pay 3 tap, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand and shuffle. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 7 or more lands, transform Thematic Compass. It then transforms into the Spires of Araska, which is a land that taps for 1 colorless, can also tap to untap target attacking creature an opponent controls and remove it from combat. So Thematic Compass is just a better Journeyer's Kite, which did see EDH play for a long time outside of green decks, and it has the benefit of when you get to 7 lands, which this helps you do consistently, but like 7 lands in Commander is a lot more common than 7 lands in any other format. You'll just flip it into Spires of Araska, which is basically just Mazavith that also taps for mana. Mazavith allows you to target your own creatures, so there's some corner cases where you might want to save something or get an attack trigger and then pull it out. But realistically, Spires of Araska is just a very good defensive card. If you get into a position where an opponent is beating you up with their commander, you can just say, I'm no longer going to allow your commander to attack me. If you want it to do anything, you need to send it somewhere else.
I really like Spires of Araska, and I think even if Thematic Compass didn't have that ramp mode, I think I would play it just because I like Spires of Araska.
I think you're insane in the head. Just play Mazavith if you want to.
Yeah, but this it's 2 mana for a land ramp spell. If you
Well, so it's not true ramp.
No.
I'll concede to that, but it can be for
you hit your land.
That's not where I'll actually argue out. Yes, it helps you to hit your land drops. This is really good for a colorless deck. Like this is where I played it. I played it in a colorless deck where you're only running 5 wastes in an ideal colorless deck. So you're just taking a couple of wastes out and making sure you hit land drops in a deck that's usually cutting it kind of close towards like 36, 37 because you're just running so many rocks.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought when I saw this was put it into like blue-white control because you're obviously kind of strapped for ramp spells, but in that deck you also want to be holding up mana most turns anyway. So if nothing good to counter comes along, or if you don't have any like draw spell you want to cast, you can just go get your land drop for next turn and then do your draw go thing. And also Spires of Araska is great for a control deck, obviously.
Yes.
I'm not sold on this card for general use, but it's definitely an interesting tech piece.
It's never the best card in your deck, but there are going to be plenty of games where you draw it and you're not sad that you drew it. And if you're playing Journeyer's Kite, take that card out of your deck, throw it away, and put a Thematic Compass in instead. It is not 2012. Take Journeyer's Kite out of your deck.
I also like the fact that this transforms on your instep instead of your upkeep.
Mm-hmm. So you can play it when you already have 7 lands, and then just immediately transform it going into your end step, which is nice for late game.
All right. Next card is Jude's card.
Okay. Memory Deluge. 2, blue, instant. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast the spell. Put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And it has flashback for 5 blue. So the first time you cast it, under normal circumstances, you're going to look at 4, take 2. When you cast it from your graveyard, it's going to be look at 7, take 2, under normal circumstances. If someone has like a Thalia out or something that actually kind of benefits you because you get to look at 1 more card, but it's a corner case. I don't know. I just really like 4 mana draw 2s. I don't think they're ever like the best spell, but I just like them. And this is a really good one because you get to double dip on it. It gets around draw hate because you don't technically draw the cards, and it's card selection, and like less than 1% of people on EDH Rec are playing this. More people are playing Splash Portal than are playing Memory Deluge, and I think that's a crime against nature and against cardboard too. Please put this card in your blue decks. It's a little more like control oriented, but I mean, I think you could jam this in just about any blue deck, and it would do fantastic for you.
So I'll speak up on Memory Deluge's behalf. I've had some positive experience running Memory Deluge in a couple of different decks, and I'll say this: card selection over card draw is significantly better. Like, you're not wrong in that. And I do think when you get to cast this for 7, you're kind of doing a little bit of a dig through time almost. And turns out paying 7 for a dig through time, while not ideal, is still fine, because dig through time is a busted card. I don't love it outside of a more controlling, like, slow deck, because you usually don't want to be holding up all your mana. Like, holding up 4 is one thing, holding up 7, I mean, everyone's going to assume you're going to Cyclonic Rift, but if they figure out you don't have Cyclonic Rift, they just don't care. It's like, okay, cool, you're holding up multiple counter spells. I think it wants to be in a slower deck, and that's fine. Like a blue-black or a blue-white or some combination of it. I don't think I would play it in an Izzet shell.
Yeah, I think 4 mana is like competing with like a lot of engine spells, and then there's also a lot of like draw to have a minor setback, but you can build around that setback at 3 mana that are also competing with this card. I think it's just got a lot of competition in the blue department.
I suppose.
So I think it's solid, though.
I don't know. I hear you about engines, but I think most decks want a mix of engines and like burst draw because they're good in different situations.
Yeah, but
obviously, if you can slam down a Phyrexian Arena on turn 3, that's great. But sometimes if you top deck a Phyrexian Arena, you just say, okay, well, I really wish this was a Night's Whisper or something. And this is good in a lot of those situations. You could even consider it an engine if you really wanted to, because maybe it helps you find an engine, or you do get to cast it twice.
Well, if I'm playing,
I'm gonna call cap on calling it an engine.
Yeah, no,
yeah. I don't dislike your other arguments, but I'm calling cap on that.
If I'm playing like dig, like burst draw, I usually play it at like lower mana values that synergize with my engine, so I can cast my engine and my burst in the same turn.
Why are you folks afraid of casting 4-mana spells in Commander?
Because everybody's
I didn't say I was.
Everybody's double spelling in this format. That's why.
Look, I'm happy to play Memory Deluge in a blue-white or a blue-black or even like a slower Jeskai. I just think if I'm playing something like an Izzet deck that is probably looking to do a bunch of multi-spelling, that is looking to kind of get the big payoffs, my top-end draw, which is what I would consider this to be, I think the middle mode's fine, but if you're never casting the 7-mana version of this card, I'm not playing it. Just play Fact or Fiction, and you're not playing both. But if I'm playing something like an Izzet deck, like my top end draw is going to be X spells. Yeah. It's going to be something that comes with extra bonus. So it's not that I dislike this card inherently. If someone was playing a more controlling Izzet build and they said they had Memory Deluge in the list, that's not going to be a card that I roll my eyes at. I just personally would end up playing other cards over it and have in the past.
I guess it does also compete with gifts now, which I hadn't thought about. But
with gifts unbanning, this is a little more awkward. But gifts is doing a different. This is like, oh, you can put Memory Deluge in your graveyard for, your Sultai deck, or you can play Gifts Ungiven and play a card that can actually set up ways for you to win the game effortlessly.
You can play Gifts Ungiven and have them put this in your graveyard so you can flash it back.
Oh yeah, big money. Pay 4 mana so I can pay 7 mana to get 2 cards.
Now this is pod racing.
No, this is
pod racing, truly.
Okay, well, I also picked a blue card that I think is better in the late game and in the early game. Cemetery Illuminator. 1, blue, blue, flying. Whenever Cemetery Illuminator enters the battlefield or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. Once per turn, you may cast a spell from the top of your library if it shares a card type with Cemetery Illuminator. Now, everybody should play more Graveyard Hate for number one, because this can hit opponents' graveyards and allow you to play stuff off the type of your library. And number two, a lot of people will typically play a lot of the same type in their decks. Like if you're an enchantment deck, you're running a lot of enchantments. If you're an instant deck, you're running a lot of instants. If you're an artifact deck, you're running a lot of artifacts. So it's not hard to get the benefit. And then there's also mill decks, which is your opponents are probably running a lot of different types in there amongst three of themselves, so you can easily turn this on pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a pretty reasonable 3-drop. I will say you kind of need to also be decks of a specific, or a deck really focused on a specific type. Like maybe you're doing Spirit Tribal or I don't know, Enchantment, Enchantress, something like that. I will also say this is a little bit awkward because it doesn't let you play lands off the top, which it shouldn't, for the record, but it is still awkward because sometimes you'll look at the top card and it's a land and you'll be like, great, I can't do anything with this ability. But for a 3-drop, I think this is very reasonable, and I do agree that
I'm currently I'm trying to do a little back end fact checking on this because I was just like, all right, this is a future side effect, and future side effects are fine usually. Just the ability to play off your deck can be good, but it kind of depends on how much investment you're getting into it. And I think pairing it with Graveyard Hate makes it a fine role filler. Like targeted graveyard removal can be solid. I think my immediate reaction is that if I saw this card get you any amount of value in a single game, I would just kill it on sight with a random throwaway spell because it's a 2/3. It's very small, but I think that's also fine. I think this is an include where it's not something that, as you refine a deck, it's going to stick around. When you're on your 5th or 6th edit where you're like, oh, there's new cards that are crazy good for the deck and I need to find something to cut. Eventually you're going to cut this card. But I think it's still a solid role player because it does two separate roles fine.
Yeah, I agree. It dies to removal, so it's basically unplayable.
Shush.
If you remove this on my side of the board, I'm actually kind of happy because it's not my big bomb. So you just wasted a removal spell on a card that's not my big bomb.
Isn't this
this is you bomb? Assuming I don't run removal that scales.
Yeah, I mean, I will say graveyard decks have very different priorities for what they're removing. It's I got hit by a Drakaseth and I took 10. That's fine. I don't care. There's a Dauthi Voidwalker on the board. The world stops. I have to kill it.
Look, Dauthi Voidwalker is a miserable card, and I refuse to let it stay on the board. But you know what? I'm sure at some point I have played against a card equivalent to Cemetery Illuminator, and I have grumbled as I sacrifice a creature and then cast Fatal Push because I am that person that runs Fatal Push in Commander.
Honestly, based.
I mean, wouldn't you rather just run Tragic Slip?
You run both. Because if you're a deck that can reliably set off Revolt, you're probably doing it by sacrificing creatures. I played Marin, and so most of the problematic creatures that I cared about were CMC4 or less. If you want to cast 6-drops, that's fine. The game's over at that point.
That's fair.
So Yeah. I will say, as a graveyard player, if this came in and started hitting one card at a time, I'd be like, that's annoying. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but then again, the worst thing in the world is rest in peace. So
Yeah.
All right, Lucy, it's your turn.
here's where I get to do my lovely rant about removing, including more targeted land destruction in all your decks. So Ghost Quarter is my third and final recommendation. And Ghost Quarter, for those who don't know, it's a very old card at this point. Been reprinted a bunch. Ghost Quarter is a land that taps for one colorless, or you can tap, sacrifice Ghost Quarter, destroy target land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land, put it into play, and shuffle. So Ghost Quarter, if you see any kind of problematic land, and we've all seen a lot of different problematic lands, it seems like every year we get 5 new ones that everyone hates. You just get rid of it, and they have to go get a basic. They don't have to go get one if somehow searching their library is bad, but that's a narrow enough scenario that I'm not. It's kind of like saying Path to Exile. They don't have to get a basic. They're probably going to get a basic. But replacing any problematic land with a basic is fantastic for you. If you hit a Nykthos, if you hit, a Maze's End, an Arena of Glory, if you hit a, oh goodness, why am I forgetting the name of the bomb land from War of the Spark?
I know what you're talking
I
about.
know what you're talking about.
Yes.
It puts
Let's just say emergent zone, which is not what you're talking about, but that's another land.
Yeah. But yes, you'll see non-basic lands that you want to hit. If every deck's got something, and this is kind of a catch-all for like you can play Ghost Quarter, you can play Demolition Field. I would argue that once you get to a table that is consistently in high bracket 3, bracket 4, you should be running Wasteland and Strip Mine. Yeah. Because a single target land destruction, as long as you're not looping them with Crucible of Worlds, they are just tools to deal with problems.
Yeah.
I like Ghost Quarters a little bit more than. I mean, I like Demolition Field a little bit more than Ghost Quarter, but yeah, people should run more targeted land destruction in their deck.
Yeah, my favorite thing to do with these types of lands is like if someone casts a Tempt with Discovery and the other people at my table aren't being smart, so they're just saying yes to it, I will grumble, say yes, and then go get this to blow up the Field of the Dead as it enters.
Yeah,
which is not a good
field.
Play.
Yes, Field of the Dead is another argument for just run single target land destruction.
Yeah,
you don't have to run Stone Rain. You don't have to run Sinkhole. Just run stuff like Ghost Quarter. Every deck can afford a couple of lands that don't tap for colored mana. Less so if you're getting into like 4 color range, but then you're doing some other nonsense. Yeah. Like just play stuff that can remove lands.
Great argument for running Beast Within or like Vindicate as well.
You haven't
lived
for running Wild Magic Surge.
Ghost Quarter costs no mana. Get your double red out of here.
All right.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about this card.
Also, if you can play Ghost Quarter, get the original Dissension version pictured here because it's a quarter with ghosts in it, and its art is way better than whatever the hell they put on Ghost Quarter since then.
I've never seen this art before. I've only seen the Innistrad version, but this is cool. I like how
I used to have a foil version. It was my baby. Foil versions are not cheap, but it is what it is. Very pretty card.
Okay. This is our last card for today, and it's mine. So we're going to be talking about Requiem Angel to end things off here. This is 5 and a white for an angel. It's a 5/5 with flying, and whenever another non-spirit creature you control dies, put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. There's a very important word in this card that is not on it. There's a very important word that's not on this card, and that's non-token. I really like running this in token-focused decks to basically give all of your tokens like Afterlife 1. As long as you're not already running a bunch of spirit tokens, like you can run what's the Orzhov flashback spirit generator card? I don't know how I'm forgetting it, but
Lingering Souls?
Yeah, if you're running Lingering Souls with this, that's still fine. But like, I don't know. I really like this card. I've been running it in Aristocrat decks for a long time, and it always performs a little bit better than it looks. It also helps that it's just a 5/5 flyer, which is very useful to have on a lot of boards. And 6 mana is a decent rate for that when you're also getting this other effect.
I would say that the only decks I would consider running this in is Aristocrats, simply because White has a lot of protection spells that are just really good.
Yeah.
And in Aristocrats decks, I think it's competing with cards like Olinda and Teysa Karlov, which Olinda, whenever a creature dies, it gets counters, and whenever Olinda dies, she poops out a bunch of tokens. And Teysa Karlov doubles all your death triggers. And they're cheaper mana values than 6 mana.
I mean, I think you can just run both because this does something that those two don't necessarily do, which is be a big flyer.
Gives additional bodies.
Yeah, and it gives you additional bodies.
Well, Olinda gives you additional bodies.
Once she
when she dies. Yeah.
I like both those cards you mentioned, but I just think they're a different category than this.
This may surprise you. I'm about to be arguing very in favor of Requiem Angel. I think Requiem Angel, like you said, is criminally underplayed. I think a lot of people see a 6 mana 5/5 that does nothing when it comes in, and they say, "Oh, that's not worth it." Well, in Commander, you can have some higher end stuff that has a payoff. If you're running a card like Divine Visitation or something, you can find a spot for Requiem Angel. Now, speaking of cards like Divine Visitation, this and cards like Divine Visitation and Jinnie Fay Jetmir II, cards that replace what tokens you make with other tokens, is actually just silly with this card. So something like, let's use Divine Visitation. Let's say you're playing a mono white token deck, which I've done before. And you have Divine Visitation in play, you have this in play, someone kills any of your non-spirit creatures. This card tries to make a 1/1 spirit. Divine Visitation says no, make a 4/4 angel instead. Well, now if they try to kill the 4/4 angel, Requiem Angel is going to say, well, that's not a spirit. You should make a spirit. That spirit's going to become an angel, which will then make another spirit angel when it dies. Like, it just ends up in this weird loop that ends up being really powerful for more Aristocrat decks, but it can have a payoff in more of a mono white package. Something in Aristocrats is any card that inherently leaves a body behind always has inherent value. So if you turn every one of those cards into having an additional body that it can leave behind, and that additional body, or not the additional body, but the body that it was going to leave before, now leaves an additional body as well, you're turning something as simple as a Goblin Instigator into 4 creatures instead of 2. And that's a huge benefit. I do understand that it's a little clunky at 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer. I don't think a 5/5 flyer is anything to shake a stick at, but at the same time, it has gotten a little less scary as EDH has power crept, and I think more people are playing more just random flyers and removal. But you play this card in any deck that cares about tokens, whether it's Aristocrats or going wide, and there's going to come a day where your pod gets upset that they didn't kill it before a board wipe happens. You get some dummy situations where like this and a bunch of other creatures die. That's the other thing to note on this card. It says when another non-spirit creature you control dies, not when one or more non-spirit creatures. Because while it won't count itself, if you have this and 5 soldier tokens in play and someone board wipes, you're getting 5 spirits.
Yeah.
And that still leaves you open for something like a Moonshaker Cavalry, or it plays nicely into something like Cathar's Crusade, because then you immediately just have a dummy board of flyers. Like it makes board wipes on token decks awkward.
Honestly, though, I'd rather just run a protection spell.
You can do that
you
as
only get
well.
So many of those. Yeah, like this thing is slotting into. Like I would run this over something like Divine Visitation first.
But you only have so many slots in your deck.
Sure, and I value this highly in decks with tokens in it. This isn't even my card, and I'm about to climb on this hill Jude, get behind me.
Thank you.
I guess y'all could die on that
Can our-
row when I cast farewell.
Can our editor put the meme of like the soldiers standing in front of the children with knives raining?
We don't have
But
an
we-
editor.
Oh,
Yeah, we do. It's you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And with that, don't you have some editing to do on this episode now that we have finished recording?
All right, everybody. Just remember, don't deck and drive. Say bye, everybody.
Bye bye. Don't deck and drive.
Say
Bye bye.